Good afternoon and welcome back. We're going to change our attention away from the technology and more toward a business perspective in this presentation, particularly capital that SMEs and actually any business needs. Often capital for growth and technology investment can be found through economic development sources. Steve Dust has years of experience in economic development. Steve has built a 45-year career in corporate, business, real estate, and economic development. Steve has pursued his passion for manufacturing and industrials throughout his career in the private, nonprofit, and public sectors. His work has been recognized with the Advocacy and Action Award from the Iowa Association of Business and Industry. Steve earned a Bachelor of Science in Public Service Administration degree at the University of Central Missouri and an MBA degree at the University of Iowa. Welcome to our World Manufacturing Forum stage, Steve.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Thank you for being with us.
Well, I really do appreciate being here and having the opportunity to talk about the situation when your business, your SME starts to grow and you need to invest. And you'll encounter the question of how to source and preserve and leverage your capital. You're going to need, like always, to allocate your capital where it's most efficient for operations and your investors. And to encapsulate what I talk about is what's on the slide right now. Capital will always go where it's welcome, and it will stay where it's well treated. Importantly, capital is not just money, it's also talent and ideas. And that was said by a guy named Walter Wriston, known as Wriston's Law of Capital. Walter Wriston was the chair of Citibank. If you're from anywhere around Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Walter Wriston made your modern economy with the decision to locate a number of his processing centers there. But it was said in the context of globalization, significantly before that was a common term, particularly in manufacturing. So if anyone has received an email from me over the last 15 years, it has had that quote, Wriston's Law of Capital, at the bottom as my signature, because it is so true to what we're talking about today. Your capital will always go where it's welcome, and it will stay where it's well treated, and it can move. So our focus today is how do SMEs optimize the results with economic development entities when you are going to have significant employment growth. You're going to go through the adoption of new technologies, the addition of new equipment, capital expenditures, and perhaps a physical plant site selection and expansion project. And in that regard, go back just a moment. In that regard, there are a lot of standard tools and initiatives that you might have heard about, but so much is hyper local. It's going to be customized to your city that you're looking at or the state in which you're going to operate. I know that many of you have already heard of things like TIF, tax increment financing, and tax exempt bonds and tax abatements, but those words have different meanings from city to city and certainly from state to state. By statute and practice. Go ahead. Oops, pardon me. So what's this all about with Steve Dust? Well, I've done this my entire career in one form or another. It's all I've done. But it has primarily been in older legacy cities that have an industrial economic base. Often they had commodity employment, if you will. But it's gone throughout the gamut of activities, industrial site selection and spec build-to-suit development and construction management, all of that. But it's all been about primarily manufacturing, how to make your type of operations grow and thrive in a place. Lots of transaction. Most of the time I've spent working with places trying to position themselves as the right spot for you. It's a lot more fun working with you and trying to make the growth project happen for you and your stakeholders and your employees. So let's and also I know that a lot of you don't have projects on your plate right now. These are not everyday occurrences, but they're becoming more regular for you, aren't they? As you look at new ways to bring new talent on, new technologies in, and sometimes that leads to the need for either an expansion of your existing location, a new facility in your existing location, or a new facility in another location. And that's the framework that I want to use throughout the rest of our time, is when that time does come for your business growth, then how do you approach it with your economic developer or whomever you're speaking to at the time. So you're thinking, I'm in the middle of Industry 4.0 transformations. Does this place understand what I'm going through? And the way that you begin to understand what they understand about you is to simply ask the questions. What innovative approaches are you taking to build this place, to build this area's economic base that's different than it has been in the past? And what are your goals now? How do you want this place to grow, change from whatever it has been to become whatever it needs to be? And how does my operation fit into that? So it's a discovery process on your side as well, but let them know that it's going to be a conversation. Frankly, economic developers right now are in the middle of trying to figure out how to deal with 4.0. They're not sure how to make their place acceptable to your investment. They're listening to you, they're hearing the things that you're going through, but now they have to translate the attributes of that place into fitting the requirements of your project. And that's always, that change process is always uncomfortable, particularly when you have to bring the political environment along with you to make investment decisions to accommodate your capital investment decision or your employment decision. So we need to help shift the mindsets of the economic developer to help you accelerate the growth that you need, accelerate scaling, and to get to market quicker. Frankly, you have to press them on these issues of what needs to evolve in that place. You know, one of the newsletters that we see is called Seeking Alpha. That has to do with the financial markets. But, you know, Seeking Alpha now applies to places as well. Alpha is, how does this place overperform in a cyclical and risk-adjusted basis compared to what the average region is doing? And then the concept of beta, as it applies to economic growth, is the level of cyclical sensitivity to overall U.S. macro trends. So I don't want to get too far deep into the weeds, but you need to be aware that places are looking at you and saying, how does this operation work against our alpha goals performance or our beta performance? And their places are using far more sophisticated targeting to find you as well. So what is a high alpha place? What does that look like? What does that mean? Well, that's the Austin, Texas, the Salt Lake Cities, the Silicon Valleys, by all means, the Columbus, Ohios of the world. Those places are excelling in growth beyond what anybody would expect in a normal cycle. So the beta cities, there's some very high performing beta cities. There's nothing wrong with that. It simply says, how fast do we grow when we're coming out of a downturn? And do we accelerate faster than other places? Most of the time. So I'll start with the biggest failure that we're all aware of. I'd ask for this if we were in a crowd together, and I'd hope that most of you would say Detroit. That's the place where beta failed. We didn't have that kind of recovery that we normally would have seen in a cycle. But where have we seen it? We've seen it in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has transformed itself. We've seen it in Des Moines, where because of civic investment, it has well outperformed any city of a similar size. And Oklahoma City, focusing not on petroleum, but focusing on medical technologies and education, is got a very high beta score. So you're in a traded cluster business. You can go anywhere. You pay more than most other employers, and you sell to much larger external markets. You are what these places want, whether they're trying to respond to high growth beta or whether they're trying to create alpha. So now I'm going to go back to that targeting remark. Places know more about you sooner than they have in the past. Research is much more sophisticated. They have access to more purchase databases than they have, or subscription databases than they have been in the past. And so they are able to get very granular in targeting not only the kinds of businesses that they want to pursue and use their resources towards, but also about you and your name, your type of operation, your growth rate, your sale. They have a much deeper dossier on you than they have on the entire sector in the past. But they need and want you. I'll tell you one thing that I wanted to throw out. When you get into a discussion with an economic development professional and you're talking about a project in their location, ask them for what their synchronous prime value score is for your business. Synchronous prime value score, their jaw will drop. Because on the backside, if you wherever you happen to be located now, they're surveying you, and then unbeknownst to you, likely they've put a score on your business. They don't want you to leave. You're likely a high priority business in using these technologies and using these skill sets. So ask them what that score is and see how they respond. Also, the kind of talent that you're going to be using in your expansions and your projects is scarce. You know that. They know that. So in order to maximize the value of the economic development transaction with them, you need to maximize the value of the use to which you're going to put their labor force. How are you going to improve it? How are you moving people, reskilling people from commodity to value added? To what kind of skills are you going to recruit into the area? It's all about people. And I got to tell you, I love Dr. Michael's presentation earlier today. After you've gone through the conference, go back and watch his presentation again. It was outstanding to give you more tools on how to crack that or to put salve on that pain point that you have on a consistent basis. It's all about people. So again, more weight on talent development skills and upskilling. If you can help the place drive upskilling of people who have antiquated skills, you're going to be more valuable to them. Take some time to understand what their tax basis is about. I'm right now in a state where sales tax is far more important relative to the overall tax collection than property tax is. I just left a state where it was the exact reverse. Property taxes drove all the incentive deals. Here, almost all. Sales tax may be what they're trying to protect at this location. So you've got to be sensitive to how is that tax base built. And then we need to take a look at the ability to utilize an entrepreneurial ecosystem in the location. Now, what's that all about? They're trying to enable startups. They're trying to not prop up, that's a bad way to say it, but they're trying to give substance and strength to growth-oriented businesses. They're often going to talk about second stage businesses where you might have up to 50 million or more in sales. You've got about 100 employees. You're growth oriented. And even if you're beyond that, it's important to you because you're always developing new ideas and using components, or you're coming up with new ideas, developing new products. Using components of the entrepreneurial ecosystem will help you. So what does that mean? If you've got a spin out, you're going to be looking for local capital likely. If you've got a product you're trying to build up or a new unit you're trying to build up inside your organization, you're going to be looking for a place outside the plant perhaps, but inside the area where you can try some things out. Maybe you're just looking for a piece of equipment you don't have, and you can find it in the makerspace. That makerspace that's local to you often can be a place where you can do some skunk works, where you can find a piece of equipment that just hasn't been available to you, but maybe now. We were talking about additive manufacturing earlier. So the pieces and parts of the entrepreneurial ecosystem can be very, very valuable to you. And from a non-technical point of view, building your business is just as important. You might need the assistance on the management side, the business building side, more than on the technical side. And if that's true, I'm going to give you a national reference to a place called Edward Lowe Foundation and a process they go through called System for Integrated Growth. And I've got that on the screen, and it'll be a part of the post-presentation materials. Edward Lowe is a great story to tell, but we don't have time today to go through it. But he's going through what you're going through right now in building his business in a little bitty Midwestern city called Cassopolis, Michigan. And he didn't want you to have to go without the kinds of resources that he went without. And so he has funded an amazing location and system of support for folks just like you. And I would encourage you to take advantage of those resources. Okay, so when we talk about economic development, 9 times out of 10, financing comes to mind. I'm not going to go through the ones that are typical and usual in a location. I'm going to go through some things that you need to be aware of and be certain that it's on your checklist when you're talking to your team about your next project, whether it's people, equipment, or physical facilities, or all three. The opportunity zone, that is it's a designated location that attracts capital to do new projects in economic disadvantaged areas. These are designated by the federal government and the state together. And the big advantage to that is that someone can sell a piece of property in another location, move their capital gains into an opportunity zone, leave it in the opportunity zone for 10 years and owe no taxes on the growth. And so that really boosts the returns on the original sale, doesn't it? So that is a very, it's an attractive spot for new physical projects, period. New market tax credits are probably the most complex incentive that you or I would ever deal with. And so I've given you a couple of references here. New market tax credits, again, can only be used in designated areas, places that have been set aside by the federal government as economically disadvantaged. But it can mean up to 25% of the equity of the physical aspects of your project. It can be very significant. You find a place that's new market tax credits and an opportunity zone combined, that can be very significant to your capital structure in a project. Don't ever forget about R&D tax credits. There are places that are going to reward you very nicely for the expenditures that you have on the R&D side. One of the regional states here has a 6.5% R&D tax credit that can be boosted significantly if you also add employment to their high quality job growth component. So R&D tax credits can be far more significant than just the R&D, but there are a lot of places that don't. So look for that R&D tax credit at the state level. Build grant application cities. There's always infrastructure that goes with a project. If a city is looking for a build grant, it's an opportunity to get road, rail, any kind of infrastructure that's horizontal infrastructure that's necessary for your project. Build is the largest existing federal grant program available to cities. So they're usually competing for somewhere between $10 and $25 million. And it can be very meaningful to you if you're on the front end in a build grant applicant city, because you're going to add justification to their grant application and you're going to get some infrastructure out of the deal, probably in the form of a grant, if not very low interest. Private equity and venture capital, always look for it locally before you start spreading your wings and looking for it outside. And it's probably going to be less expensive, less onerous, and more quickly available to you privately or locally than if you go outside your existing region. And the economic developer can usually point you in the direction of people who are willing to make a favorable transaction with you. When I was practicing, I had phone calls all the time from people who were willing to invest $500,000 to $5 million in a targeted set of investments. But nevertheless, it was there, it was available, and we were able to match a lot of good growth projects to that capital. And then there's one that's way out there on the bleeding edge of innovation called innovation bonds. And I've given you a reference to that as well to take a look. Honestly, I'm not aware of any place that's done that yet, but that doesn't mean it can't be done. They're looking for a project or projects, a group of projects in a significant sized city, which I was not at the time. That one is going to be an emerging tool that can be used. And I have to underscore, manufacturing is a target of everything on that list. They want manufacturers to take advantage of opportunity zones, new market tax credits, R&D tax credits, the build grant. Local PE is always looking for manufacturing. And then the innovation bonds would be a cool place to use that as well. Okay, now you're not going to do this alone. You're going to do this in a team. I have to underscore this. You're going to be tempted to try to add this onto your schedule. You don't do this every day. You're not aware of what available to you, how it should be structured, what that conversation should sound like. I'm going to strongly suggest that you find a consultant that you can rely on, and one that is aligned with what got my own fly here. That's closely aligned with what you want to do. Select it by the value proposition to your project. If your project is mammoth, then by all means, let's go to the Deloittes, let's go to some of the big guys. But if it's smaller, take a look at this reference that I've given you, business facilities, and there you'll get a flavor for the kinds of services. You can have a conversation, get an understanding for the terms and conditions of their services, and they'll guide you. They're there when you need them. They go away when you're done. But it's important for you to get the kind of value out of this transaction you should get. But it's going to take a well-informed consultant to help you navigate through that project. Now, you're going to also then begin working with economic development organizations. And I encourage you to start at the state level. The state and regional economic development marketing organizations. Now, this is kind of a nuance. Some organizations will be called economic development. They're really research oriented, but get them on your team as well. And then that community college that was talked about earlier. Yes, yes, yes. There's examples after examples of how they have become the linchpin in a successful project on the human capital side as well as the technology side. You wouldn't expect to find photonics in a little rural community college. I can show it to you. You wouldn't expect to find aviation systems in a rural community college. I can take you there. And I can also take you to a community college that really blew an opportunity to help grow a software and gamification cluster that was growing right under their nose. And that's why you have to be prepared to do your own thing if necessary. But the team is essential. And after hearing what Manuvation 4.0 is about, get them there too. That's going to be important for you as well. Okay, so what does that look like? I've given you a couple of examples here how you can stack capabilities in a small regional metropolitan area, as well as a top 25 city, St. Louis. They all have the same elements ready to serve you. You have to find out about them, but by going through a consultant to the state development organization, to the regional development marketing organization, they can stack these for you, and you don't have to be out searching for all of this yourself, and they'll know what's real and what's Memorex. Boy, there's a reference that flies back. And then I've got a great story on how not to do it, but we're not going to take the time to do that today. Finally, first, is your existing location, is the place where you are now treating your capital well? If it is, then spend your resources trying to do your project right there. Try to find a way to reward that place. Build the team. Don't go this one alone. These kinds of projects are few and far between, relatively speaking, to your normal operations. So assemble that team led by a competent consultant that's matched to your value. Huge project, probably need a more sophisticated consultant. Smaller project, smaller place, probably can use somebody that somebody knows. But get that person in charge. Be open and be creative with your economic development people. Educate and inform them about what you're doing and demand reciprocity from them. You've got to have them working with you openly and creatively with the capabilities that they have, particularly if you know where you would like to be, particularly if this is the place where you already are operating. You've got to get them as teammates rather than bargain, trying to do a bargain with you. And this is one of the toughest things to do, is to tolerate the process, to structure the best agreement. Sometimes it's intolerable. It gets tough on the economic developer side. It certainly gets tough on your side, because you've just got to get this thing done. But tolerate it, because it's probably got some dollar signs attached to it. It's probably got some people attached to it. And to your benefit, to be a little patient in how it goes. And finally, you as a manufacturer, you as a growth-oriented manufacturer, are the backbone of our country's economy, of our global economy. We need you to grow. And people like me in economic development, in trying to help places grow, are here to assist. So it's not directly germane to what you're going to do when you walk back out on the plant floor, but it is directly germane to how you're going to grow your business. So thank you very much, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that might arise.
Well, thank you very much for that information. That's fantastic. What do you think about holding and investing like a matchmaking event? What do you think about that?
A match for a community?
Yeah, community projects, investors, all.
Oh, absolutely. I have done that in the past, where I have gathered some potential investors to hear a story. And then privately later, the potential investors and the project leaders can discuss interest terms and all that sort of thing. But that is a good way to get a community engaged and involved.
Great. Yes. Now that we've had the Opportunity Zone opportunities out for a while, what have you seen kind of bubble up to the top with those? Have you seen much in the area of manufacturing when it comes to Opportunity Zones?
Not nearly as much as we should. It seems easier to do the mixed use kind of project. It seems easier to do a residential project, and there aren't as many industrial developers out there seeking the redevelopment sites. But part of that has been demand. And so I would not allow that to discourage me at all. We've got some opportunity zones in my own area right here that would be prime for an industrial investment, but somebody has to come along and show them.
Correct.
And offer the opportunity.
Yeah, I agree with you. But that's just not on the radar, I don't think, as much as any mixed use projects. Okay, let's see. Do we have any more questions over here? I don't believe we do. So what we'll do is we'll put your presentation up on the website, and for more information, they'll have your link and they'll be able to reach out to you directly. And again, thank you very much for your time today. We really appreciate all the wealth of knowledge that you shared with us.
Well, thank you. And again, like you said, telephone, any questions, just give me a holler.
Okay. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.